Welcome back to the Working Well podcast and to episode 6 of the 52 Life Lessons series. Now, if you're new to the show, here's a bit of perspective that might help. So I started the Working Well podcast to shine a light on the important intersection of human performance, leadership, and business strategy. And I still host interviews with incredible executives, trailblazers, and thought leaders from around the world. However, a couple years ago, I turned 50. Imagine that, we age. And as part of wrapping my brain around this big milestone, I created a list of the 50 biggest lessons I'd learned throughout my life. This year, I decided to update the list with a couple more because like you, I'm learning every day as well. And that way, I'd have one lesson for every week of the year. Since I learned most of these lessons the hard way, I figured that by sharing my lessons, you could take the easier path and hopefully learn from them to avoid making them yourself. So these solo episodes, they're being interspersed throughout the interview episodes. And while they're my own personal lessons, I found there's a very strong connection and an overlap with the challenges that leaders and businesses face every day. There's some of the same themes come up when I'm talking to my clients. So that was one of the reasons I decided to share them. Now, today's lesson, it's short, it's simple, and it's deceptively powerful. It's one that can transform your relationships, your business, and even your happiness if you actually practice it. So here it is. You ready? It's not about you. That may sting a little, especially for the high achievers, the speakers, the salespeople, and the go-getters that are listening right now. But stay with me, because learning to focus on being interested, not just interesting, may be one of life's most underrated leadership and influence lessons. And I learned this about 15 years ago. I was going through a rough patch, both in business and personally. Things just weren't clicking. I was putting myself out there. I was having lots of conversations, working hard to grow my business. The business entrepreneur grind. I was networking and really trying to connect. Looking back, it felt like I was pushing a boulder uphill. Then one day, I was having a conversation with a mentor and friend of mine, Pat Rigsby. And he said something that stopped me in my tracks. In the way that Pat can only do it, he said, "Tim, you seem to be pushing really hard to get people interested in you. Maybe it's time to try being interested in them first." And like I said, it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, "Whew, that one hit a lot harder than I thought it would." But he was telling the truth. I'd been working so hard to be interesting to people, to tell my story, to showcase my expertise, to prove my worth, that I'd forgotten that the most powerful form of connection is curiosity. Once I shifted my focus from trying to impress people, wanting to understand, everything changed. The conversations got a lot easier. The energy was lighter in the conversations. People started opening up. And ironically, they became more interested in me. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but here's the secret. When we stop trying to be interesting and start being interested, we create the space for curiosity, space for people to be seen, heard, understood. And that's where the real connection happens. Now, whether you're leading a team, selling a product, mentoring a colleague, or meeting someone new at a networking event, your ability to be curious, to genuinely want to know more about them, that's what builds trust and influence. And here's what's fascinating. This isn't just a nice idea or some pseudoscience thing. There's real hard science behind it. When people talk about themselves, their brains release dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter. And that means every time you ask a good question and listen with genuine interest, you're literally giving someone a mini dopamine hit. They leave the conversation feeling great, and they associate that feeling with you. That's the magic of curiosity. It's human connection chemistry. So when I started my formal executive coach training, I noticed that this principle got supercharged because coaching at its core is built on curiosity, authenticity, and deep listening. You learn to go beyond the surface and explore what's really driving someone, their beliefs, their fears, their motivations, and their values. Listening beyond the words to that emotion, the tone, and the silence. That completely changed how I show up in every area of life. Now I communicate better with clients, with my colleagues, and with family. I connect with people faster and on a deeper level. And honestly, it just feels more meaningful because I'm actually seeing people, not just trying to perform for them. And I can already hear you thinking, yeah, this may sound great, but how do I actually practice being interested instead of interesting? Here are 3 simple ways that you can get started. The first one, simply ask better questions. When we move beyond the small talk, we open up greater interest. We snap people out of their routines. So instead of the typical, so what do you do? Try, what do you do for fun? Or what got you into that? Maybe, what's something you're excited, or what's something excited you're working, wow. What's something exciting you're working on right now? Or when someone says where they're from, ask something like, what was it like growing up there? These types of questions snap people out of the small talk mindset, and it opens the door for richer conversation and genuine curiosity. And the second tip is listen to understand, not to respond. Now, many of us have heard this before, but I find that we often aren't putting it into practice. Most people listen just long enough to jump in with the next point or a personal story, or even worse, the one-upmanship. Someone says about a challenge that happened. Oh, well, you should hear the challenge that I do, or that I had. I had to do this, and it was even bigger. And then they come back with their one-up. Instead of doing that, slow down. Reflect back what you heard. Ask a follow-up question. It's amazing how powerful that simple act of presence can be. And the third tip is shift your focus before every interaction. Before a meeting or a conversation, pause for a few seconds and think, how can I help this person feel seen, heard, and valued? And that tiny mindset shift is powerful, and it changes everything about how you show up. Now, I first learned this lesson in terms of business, but it's important to remember that it isn't just about better networking or business success. It's about becoming a better human. And when practiced, this lesson will improve the most important conversations and relationships in your life. When we stop centering ourselves and start centering others, life becomes more interesting. Relationships deepen. Opportunities expand. And ironically, people start to see you as the most interesting person in the room, not because of what you say, but because of how you make them feel. So as you move through your day, try this little experiment. Instead of trying to be the most interesting person in the room, aim to be the most curious. You'll be absolutely amazed at what happens next. Try it out. Let me know what you think. So thanks for tuning in to Lesson 6 of the Working Well podcast 52 Life Lesson series. And remember, it's not about you. Now, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you think could use the reminder. And don't forget to subscribe to all the episodes of the Working Well podcast. You can find them at timborys.com/podcast or on your favorite streaming service. And we've got interviews with amazing leaders and change makers from around the world coming up, along with the next solo episodes. So until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, it's not about you. That wraps up another episode of the Working Well podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, which guests or topics would you like to see featured on the show? Message me through LinkedIn or on the contact page of timborys.com with your ideas. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tim Borys with Fresh Wellness Group, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.